Hi. So this is my first time going live. Um, I'm gonna figure out if this records or not, but I hope it does. Let me check. Does it? I think it does. Okay. So this is particularly to my intimate partner violence or domestic violence girlies who are on the fence of whether or not they should support Free Palestine, or even why. Like, why am I doing this? Because for the past few months, I've been really kind of pushing on this agenda, or essentially lobbying for change or reform in family code and domestic violence is seen by society and how the perpetrators of that are held accountable. I've been doing a lot of research, particularly in neuroscience, but also just social studies, on the kind of people, the behavioral traits of an abuser. And given what's happening in Gaza, I can't help but find the similarities. And behind me is a whiteboard, and I'm going to be kind of drawing that out. So there's a specific neurological brain type that engages in abusive behaviors, and they're very similar to between like a psychopath, sociopath, domestic violence abuser, Netanyahu, anybody at any point in history who has essentially primarily been motivated by power and control, and that is it. They essentially kind of perpetrate such acts. So we are going to kind of go over what the basic traits are. So how do I get this? Okay. Here the basic traits are, they are kind of high in conflict. And they hold very rigid values, very rigid views. It's like kind of black and white thinking. So it's either it's us or them. It's a very us versus them worldview. So these people can't really find the nuance between, any complex topic, or they can't really have the social ability to solve problems collaboratively. So it's either I win or they win, and that is it. They're extremely antagonistic, that goes into high conflict. They really find it hard to just move on. They're high in vindictiveness. They are constantly saying that they are the victim mindset. But in reality, they are usually the perpetrators. They have a strong sense of entitlement. And they are extremely emotionally dysregulated. Then they are kind of manipulative. Victim mindset would be like just blaming others for everything. I think there are a couple more. So let me just try to get the last few. They are extremely concerned with image management. The way they do that is by being a compulsive liar. Okay. They're extremely controlling. And I think the most important thing, like it kind of, so compulsive liar kind of comes with false accusations. This is a abuser profile. And the last aspect would be refusal to take responsibility. So these kind of people are typically very, very low in empathy. And why do I kind of bring this up, right? Like, what is the purpose in, let me try to see this, bringing something like this up? The reason being is when you look at, say, a bad boyfriend or an abusive husband, and you look at Netanyahu, they follow the same pattern, the exact same pattern of behaviors. They want total annihilation of the other person that they deem. So nothing is ever enough. For instance, if your spouse wanted full custody of your child and they got like 90%, that's not enough. They want to basically wipe the other parent off the map, away out of the child's life. That's the exact same thing Netanyahu is doing. He wants to erase Palestine altogether from the map. It's not even about sharing, it's about eliminating, total domination. So somebody who's extremely high in like need to win, somebody who has basically this us versus them mindset, it's black and white mindset. We cannot collaborate or cooperatively come to any solution. It's either I win, and if they win, that means I am losing. This is the same mindset that abusive partners have, and the same mindset that dictators have, that warmongers have. They're extremely vindictive. They'll use the past instead of learning from the past. It's more of, you did this to me and I must retaliate. I must find vengeance. The inability to really process, digest history and learn from their mistakes and learn, what the outcomes of violence were so that we can prevent doing that in the future. All they learn is you hurt me, hence I must hurt you. And that goes into the vindictiveness. When it comes to like victim mindset, it's usually when you look at domestic violence perpetrators, they always start with constantly attacking their original victim to a point where they can't take it anymore and they react. But when the victim reacts, then the roles switch and now the original abuser is the victim. And they are like, oh, you're the one who's abusive. That in psychology, that's called reactive abuse. So what these type of personalities are high conflict is either they're narcissistic, they have borderline personality disorder, autism, any kind of psychopathy, sociopathy. They essentially use a method called Darvo, which is firstly denial. So when you are denying all allegations, it's like, oh, it's okay to lie. It's okay to just be a compulsive liar, make false accusations. That's where you deny, but then you attack. So you attack the original victim and say, oh, I never did it. It was the victim. Palestinians, they were the one who started it first. It's kind of childish behavior, right? It's like, imagine two little kids fighting and they're like, oh, but they started it first. Then we reverse victim and offender roles. For the new people who just joined me, I'm kind of gonna go over this briefly. This is essentially kind of guide on why I've been talking recently a lot more about the conflict or genocide in Gaza compared to what I've been doing most recently, which was looking at the impact of domestic violence on women and children. But realistically, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. There isn't a difference. Abusers think the exact same way. They want power and control and total control, not even like, oh, I want to share it. This is why they are compulsive liars. They make false accusations, and they're extremely controlling because they don't want the truth to come out. This is why they put gag orders, and they want to, like, so in Palestine, or in any kind of country where you have a dictator, they usually don't have the internet, so they control them by isolation. They control their ability to share knowledge or get knowledge. This is what abusers do too. They isolate their victim from their would have been support systems. What are the aspects of? So there's a dilute model of power and control wheel that's regularly used by domestic violence agencies to essentially teach victims what happened to them. Abusers basically use a lot of intimidation, coercion, and threats. They use economic abuse in Palestine, that's basically cutting off all kinds of access to food, water, any health services. They minimize, deny, and blame the other party, even though the evidence is beyond obvious who the aggressor is, who has the most wealth, the most power to perpetrate this kind of abuse. But it's essentially you just be like, oh, they started it first, so we are justified in our oh, we are just protecting ourselves. This is the same concept that abusers use when they make claims of abuse against the actual victim, when the victim is defending themselves. And the use of isolation. So the reason I bring this up is when it comes to neuroscience, abusers have a specific type of brain, quite literally. When you take a functional MRI of any abuser, of a psychopath or sociopath or narcissist, they kind of have a similar brain type. They have a largened amygdala and a much kind of inferior or a smaller gray area in the prefrontal cortex. What this means is they kind of behave like animals in the sense that they are extremely reactive to threat, similar to a jellyfish. So jellyfish have a neural net. Essentially, there's no central nervous, there's no brain. The way that works is, in humans, we have our autonomic nervous system. So when you touch a hot plate, your body instantly recoils your finger, and after that, your brain registers, ouch, that hurt, that was very hot. It doesn't go like to the nerve, to your brain first, saying that, oh, this feels hot, let me take my finger off. That doesn't happen. It's autonomic. That's how jellyfish are. It's like, I sense fear, I must run away. And in the human brain, you have essentially your like emotional cortex, which is the insula, and that's where you kind of detect threats. And ideally, you should be able to recognize that and then send that message to your prefrontal cortex, where then you can like emotionally regulate, calm yourself down, and then using like your brain's whiteboard, do a pros and cons list. These are my options, and these are my solutions. And then you can like essentially make good decisions. Versus when we have people who are reactive, or basically most abusers who are extremely reactive, they feel like they don't have an option. So every time we talk to an abuser, any abuser, they'll always blame the victim. Only if she didn't do that. If she didn't talk to me in that way, if she didn't question me, I wouldn't hit her. It's always an external locus of control. It's never their fault. It's never their fault. This is the same behavior Netanyahu does. This is the same behavior any dictator does. It's never their fault. They don't have the brain capacity for self-reflection, or even looking at the multiple options. It's, if you had a code, it's like an if-then statement. That's it. It's if-then. There isn't a switch case where there are multiple options. It's just somebody threatened me, I have to protect myself, hence I must attack. Whether it's attacking your spouse or attacking a whole different country and like wiping them off of this earth. So it essentially comes down to the